Have you ever raised your voice and immediately hated yourself for it? Not because you meant to hurt someone, but because you didn't even recognize who you became in that moment. Here's the part most people don't realize. You're probably not an angry person. Your anger is covering something else, and until you understand what that is, it will keep happening. Have you ever snapped at someone you love and then immediately regretted it? Have you ever felt that sudden heat rising in your chest, your jaw tightening, your voice getting sharper than you intended, and thought, why am I like this? Anger doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the cold silence, the short replies, the way you replay a conversation over and over in your head long after it ended. Maybe you tell yourself you're just stressed. Maybe you blame traffic, deadlines, your partner, your kids, the economy, the unfair boss, the friend who should have known better, but deep down, you know, it's bigger than that. You don't actually want to be this irritated. You don't wake up hoping to argue. You don't enjoy feeling out of control. And yet, it keeps happening. You try to stay calm. You promise yourself you won't react the same way next time. But the next time comes, and there it is again. That flash, that surge, that sharp edge in your voice. Anger can make you feel powerful for a second, and ashamed right after. It can push people away, the very people you're afraid of losing. Maybe you've noticed this pattern. You work hard. You try your best. You carry responsibilities silently. You swallow frustration to keep the peace. And then one small thing happens. Something minor, and it's like the dam breaks. And suddenly, it's not about that one thing anymore. It's about everything. It's about not being heard, not being appreciated, not being understood, not feeling seen. Sometimes anger feels easier than sadness, stronger than fear, safer than admitting, that hurt me. So instead of saying, I feel ignored, we say, you'll never listen. Instead of saying, I'm overwhelmed, we say, why is everything on me? Instead of saying, I'm scared, we say, I'm done. Anger often speaks for wounds we haven't named yet. And maybe that's why you're here, because somewhere inside, you're tired of reacting the same way. Tired of the guilt afterward, tired of the distance it creates. You don't want to be the angry one. You don't want to feel like you're always on edge. You just want peace. But before we can calm the fire, we have to understand why it started. If you've ever wondered why your anger feels bigger than the situation in front of you, stay with me. There's more beneath it than you think. Most of the time, anger isn't the real problem. It's the surface reaction, the visible smoke, but the fire started somewhere deeper. Psychologically, anger is often a secondary emotion. That means it usually shows up to protect something more vulnerable underneath. Fear, shame, rejection, exhaustion, helplessness. Think about it. When someone criticizes you, do you feel angry first? Or do you feel exposed? When your partner forgets something important, are you truly furious? Or do you feel unimportant? When your boss overlooks your effort, are you just mad? Or do you feel invisible? Anger is fast, vulnerability is slow. Anger feels strong. Admitting hurt feels risky, so our minds choose the faster, stronger shield. There's also something else at play. Chronic pressure. Modern life stretches us thin. You're expected to perform at work, be emotionally available at home, stay fit, stay positive, stay informed, stay ahead. And no one really asks how you holding up. When stress builds up over days, weeks, even years, it doesn't disappear. It compresses, it waits, it accumulates like steam in a sealed container. Then one small trigger, a comment, a mistake, a tone becomes the final push, and we explode. Not because of that one moment, but because of everything we've been carrying silently. There's also the unmet expectation. We all have silent rules in our heads. They should understand. They should respect me. They should care. They should know better. But we rarely say those expectations out loud. So when reality doesn't match the script in our mind, We feel betrayed even if the other person had no idea there was a script to follow. And beneath that is something even more human. The need to matter. When we feel dismissed, interrupted, ignored, underestimated, it touches something primal. It whispers, "You don't count." And that hurts. But instead of saying, "That made me feel small," we raise our voice. Instead of saying, "I needed support," we accuse. Because anger feels like control. It gives us the illusion that we're powerful when, in truth, we're often feeling powerless. And here's the hard part. Many of us were never taught how to process emotions in a healthy way. Maybe you grew up in a house where anger was loud and explosive, or where it was suppressed and never discussed, or where feelings were considered weakness. So you learned one of two patterns. Either fight or shut down. Both are forms of anger. Some people yell. Some people withdraw. Some people become sarcastic. Some become cold. Different expressions, same root. Unprocessed pain. Unspoken fear. What if your anger isn't proof that you're broken, but proof that something inside you needs attention? Not judgment, not suppression, not explosion, just attention. Most people try to handle anger in one of two ways. They either let it erupt, or they push it down, but neither actually solves it. Erupting may release pressure for a moment, but it damages trust. Suppressing may keep the peace, but it builds resentment. There's a third way, and it starts with something surprisingly simple. Pause, name, choose. First, pause. Not a dramatic meditation. Not a perfect breathwork session, just one conscious pause. When you feel that surge, that tightening in your chest, give yourself 3 seconds. Anger moves fast, but awareness moves faster when practiced. 3 seconds can stop a pattern that's been repeating for years. Second, name it honestly. Not just, "I'm angry." Ask yourself quietly, what am I actually feeling right now? I'm primera embarrassed. Am I overwhelmed? Am I feeling ignored? Am I scared of losing control? When you name the real emotion, anger softens, because it's no longer alone at the surface. And here's the powerful truth. Most anger melts when it feels understood, even if it's just understood by you. Third, choose your response, not react. Choose. That doesn't mean becoming passive. It doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. It means responding from clarity instead of impulse. Instead of saying, "You never listen," you might say, "I felt unheard just now." Instead of, "Why do I have to do everything?" you might say, "I'm overwhelmed and I need help." This is not weakness. It's emotional strength. And yes, it feels uncomfortable at first, because vulnerability feels unfamiliar. But here's what happens when you practice this consistently. Your relationships change, not overnight, not magically, but gradually. People respond differently when you speak from truth instead of accusation, and something else shifts to inside you. You begin to feel in control. Without dominating, you begin to feel powerful. Without being loud, you begin to realize that anger was never the goal. Peace was. There's also something even more practical you can start doing. Pay attention to patterns. Notice when your anger shows up most often. Is it when you're tired? When you feel criticized? When you're rushed? When you haven't taken time for yourself in days? Anger often reveals neglected needs. Maybe you need rest. Maybe you need clearer boundaries. Maybe you need to stop saying yes to everything. Sometimes the most powerful anger management strategy isn't calming down in the moment. It's restructuring your life so you're not constantly overloaded, because a burnt-out nervous system reacts faster. And here's something rarely said out loud. It's okay to admit you don't have to carry everything silently. You don't have to be the strong one all the time. Anger becomes destructive when it's the only voice you allow yourself to use. But when you learn to translate it, it becomes guidance. It says, something matters to you. Something feels unfair. Something needs to change. And instead of lashing out, you can ask yourself, what boundary do I need? What conversation am I avoiding? What truth Am I afraid to say calmly? Anger isn't asking you to destroy. It's asking you to pay attention. And when you do, you don't become less strong. You become more aware, more grounded, more intentional. And that changes everything. But sometimes, the real power of understanding anger becomes clear through a story. Let me tell you about someone who lived most of their life believing their anger was just part of who they were, until one moment forced them to see it differently.
His name was Daniel. If you met him casually, you'd probably describe him as responsible, hardworking, reliable. But if you asked the people closest to him, they would hesitate. Good man, they'd say, but he gets angry fast. Daniel didn't think of himself as an angry person. He thought of himself as stressed. He worked long hours. He carried most of the financial pressure at home. But he rarely complained. He rarely asked for help. He just handled things. Until small things started setting him off. A misplaced bill, a loud TV, a simple question asked at the wrong moment. His voice would sharpen, his patience would disappear, and afterward he would feel that familiar heaviness, guilt mixed with defensiveness. He'd tell himself that they should understand how much I'm dealing with. But one evening changed something. He came home exhausted. Traffic had been brutal. A project at work had fallen apart. He walked in and saw his teenage son sitting on the couch, headphones on, homework untouched. Daniel snapped. He launched into a speech about responsibility, discipline, laziness, words that came out harsher than he intended. His son didn't argue. He didn't yell back. He just quietly said, "Dad, you're always mad, even when I'm not doing anything wrong." And then he went to his room. Those words didn't hit Daniel immediately. But later that night, when the house was silent, they echoed it. "You're always mad." Daniel sat in the dark living room, replaying the past few months. He remembered missed laughs at dinner, short responses to his wife, the way his son had stopped telling him small stories about school. He realized something painful. He thought he was protecting his family by carrying everything alone, but his anger was making them feel unsafe around him. And here's the moment that changed him. He didn't feel anger. He felt fear. Fear that his son would grow up remembering him as the angry father. Fear that his marriage would slowly turn cold. Fear that he was becoming someone he never meant to be. For the first time, Daniel asked himself a different question. Not why is everyone frustrating me, but what am I afraid of? The answer surprised him. He was afraid of failing, afraid of not being enough, afraid that if he slowed down or admitted stress, he'd lose control. His anger wasn't about dishes, homework, or noise. It was about pressure he never allowed himself to admit. The next day, he did something uncomfortable. He apologized. Not the quick, "Sorry, I was tired," but a real one. "I've been carrying stress badly. That's not your fault." It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and something shifted. His son started talking more again. His wife stopped walking on eggshells. And Daniel began practicing what we talked about earlier: pause, name, choose. He didn't transform overnight. He still felt anger sometimes. But instead of exploding, he began to ask, "What is this protecting?" Over time, he noticed something remarkable. The more he allowed himself to admit fear and exhaustion, the less anger controlled him. He didn't become passive. He became present. And the respect he once tried to force with intensity began to grow naturally through calm strength. Daniel realized something most of us learn late. Anger wasn't his identity. It was a signal, and once he learned to listen instead of react, he didn't lose power, he gained connection. And maybe, in some small way, his story feels familiar to you, because most of us aren't angry people. We're overwhelmed people, we're unheard people, we're afraid people who were never taught how to say, "This is hard for me." But there's one final piece to this conversation, and it might be the most important one.
Maybe no one ever taught you how to sit with your emotions. Maybe you were taught to be strong, to push through, to handle it, to not complain, and somewhere along the way, anger became your loudest language. But here's the truth. You are not your reactions. You are not your worst moments. You are not the sharp words you wish you could take back. You are a human being trying to protect something fragile inside. Anger is not proof that you're broken. It's proof that something matters deeply to you. It shows up when you feel disrespected, when you feel unseen, when you feel unsafe, when you feel like you're carrying too much alone. The goal isn't to eliminate anger. It's to understand it, because once you understand it, it loses the power to control you. When you pause, when you name what's really underneath, when you choose your response instead of reacting, you begin to reclaim your peace. And peace isn't quiet because nothing bothers you. Peace is quiet because you know how to handle what does. The strongest people are not the ones who never get angry. They're the ones who can say, "That hurt. That scared me. I need help. I need a boundary." That kind of strength doesn't shout. It builds trust. It builds safety. It builds connection. And maybe tonight, or tomorrow, the next time you feel that familiar surge rising, instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" you might ask, "What is this trying to protect?" That one question can change an argument. It can change a relationship. It can change the story you've been telling yourself about who you are. Because you are not an angry person. You are a person who cares. And when care is guided by awareness instead of impulse, it becomes wisdom. And sometimes, the most powerful transformation doesn't come from suppressing the fire. It comes from understanding why it started. If this spoke to something real in you, hold on to it. Reflect on Italiano. Share it with someone who might need it. Because the moment we understand our anger is often the moment we begin to understand ourselves.